because this has been going on since I was a kid, I don't know if something happened and I can't remember it or pushed it to the back of my memory. I don't know. I think about that a lot. I don't really want to, like, I don't like to dwell on it because I'm like, I don't really want to remember if something happened. But it probably did, and it probably was a combination between that and uh, just seeing the people around me and who I looked up to doing the same thing.
There was a weekend in October that I actually went to one of the football parties that they had at the house. I ended up getting drunk, and my friend Lauren sent me home with one of the football players that night saying that I was going to stay on his couch. I didn't end up staying on his couch. I was actually brought up into his bedroom where he decided that he was going to molest me despite being sober. And at the time, he was also trying to do more and like taking my clothes off while I'm saying no, 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 like, no, I don't want to do this. Despite anything I said, he was still trying. And I was lucky enough that my friend Lauren ended up calling me. I grabbed the phone and I answered it, and he was like, "Don't answer." And I answered him like, "Hey, what's up?" And she told me she was outside and she was coming to get me because we were going back to the dorms because the guy that she wanted to hook up with wasn't working out. So, I quickly like got my clothes on and ran out the door to meet her. And
And those two incidences were the beginning of my body image problems. And as a result, I kind of went inward. I was not as open as I may have been. I was extremely self-conscious at that point. And I started to get into a vicious cycle with food, where I would go and eat food for comfort and then be really upset with myself and with the food for what it did to me physically. So it's kind of like went around and around, and it just wasn't a good cycle to get to be on. And I got picked on every now and then over the years between fifth and seventh grade. Uh, School only went up to eighth grade, so eighth grade, I didn't really have that many problems. But I was definitely, it was the beginning of a dark period for me.
at that time, I didn't know what to say or like what to do, or do I tell her or do I not tell anybody because I'm a college kid. Like, when I think of being molested, I think of a 5-year-old being molested or like a younger kid being molested, but I'm college. I'm 18 years old. It's like, no way. That can't happen to me. So I kind of just put that in the back of my mind, and it was like no big deal. I really can't control that. And so I didn't really tell anybody. She's just like, "Oh, what'd you do?" And I was like, "Oh, nothing. He just showed me the house, and like, we talked, but it was just like a bunch of lies, and I just didn't want to tell anybody." Um,
1996. That's when my life changed, totally. Came down and it was a whole different environment. I grew up in like an urban environment with a lot of mixed races, and everybody listened to rap music at the time, and I dressed a certain way. And I come down, and everybody's all one race, and they're all surfers, and I'll listen to like the Grateful Dead, and I was a very easy target because I come down, and first of all, I'm not outgoing, and I'm not self-confident, and then all of a sudden I'm heavy, and I talk a little different, and I dress different, and I listen to different music, and that was the ammunition anybody needed. And from that first day in that school, for about 2.5, 3 years, I was bullied nonstop by seemingly everybody. Uh, of course, there were people that were nice, but but it seemed like everybody was in on it. Tormented for who I was, tormented for my size, um, not accepted in any way, made to feel like I didn't deserve love, made to feel like a piece of garbage a lot, um, and pretty much what it turned into was I started believing the lie that everybody was telling me, because it wasn't one or two people saying this, because then I could have like wiped it off my shoulder, but it seemed like it was everybody.
Um, I started dieting when I was about 9 or 10, and I just continued to hate myself more and more. I felt very inadequate. Um,
In November rolled around and I started watching what I ate. I refused to have soda, was a huge one I decided to cut out, which I would have every day. I began cutting out carbs. I would have more salads and less junk food. Oh, if the girls wanted to get cookies, I wasn't going to get cookies because, you know, that's junk food and I didn't need it. And I remember after one day or one evening at our dining hall, I actually returned back to my room and I was just so pissed off that, like, oh my God, I just broke my diet, that I just remember grabbing my scissors and just cutting my wrist. And from that moment, it was just like a scream. Like, it was just like a silent scream that I could do. And it felt good. And by the same time, it was like, this is what you get for eating. And from there, cutting my wrist was like a dangerous aspect. People can see it. So I'd cut my side or cut my stomach or cut my leg, anywhere that can be easily hidden from like practice of lacrosse.
So I obviously was having a hard time, socially, and even in my home life, I was always depressed. I hated everything. I hated my life. I actually even sat in my room with a gun on occasion to commit suicide, and I couldn't even pull the trigger and that made me even more unsure of myself because I couldn't control what was going on at school. I couldn't control my body. I couldn't control how I talked. I couldn't control people's reactions to me. I couldn't even control if I lived or died. And so I just felt worthless. And
By the end of November, it was starting to become towards finals week, and that's where crunch time was happening. But we were able to not have lacrosse for finals week, and I brought myself to the gym, and I'd work out every day to keep up with lacrosse. And at the same time, I really started cutting back more of what I was eating, so I lost a few pounds, and before I knew it, it was beginning to be winter break, where I needed a 7-minute mile by the time it came back in spring. And that's just like my coach told us, and that implanted in my head that it was needed, that I needed this 7-minute mile, and I was going to get it.
it was right around Christmas of that year where somebody had talked to me a little bit about a fad diet. And, I had been on diets off and on for, you know, for years. And they would last a day or two, but really wouldn't stick. But this diet, it kind of just hung around in the back of my mind for a few months. And I always kept coming back to it. And one day in March of that year, it was actually March the 4th, 2002. That's a real date. I was in the student dining hall. I was online ready to order my usual cheesesteak and french fries from the grill. And I just, out of nowhere, without really any preparation or research or really thought, I kind of just went, fuck it, I'm going to go on a diet. And it seemed like up until that point, everything that had been going on in my life was a domino. Whether it was the depression and the rejection and the bullying and the worthlessness, were all dominoes and they were all lines in a row at that point. And for some reason, on that day, I just took my finger and pushed that first domino down, and they all fell. And they kept falling for a long time.